Hey guys, welcome back to another Indie Spotlight featuring Queendom of Chaos by Megan Aldridge. I discovered Megan through YouTube, and it was just one of those days where the algorithm worked in favor of the little guy. She is a new author. This is her first book, I believe, coming out in June, and I had the pleasure of reading the electronic ARC, which is an advanced reader copy, in exchange for an honest review, and that's what we're going to talk about today. I'm going to try to keep spoiler things. Maybe, if anything, they're going to be toward the end of this video just because I don't want to give away too much with it being a book that's just coming out. But I definitely have some thoughts about it, so let's read the summary and get into it. Queendom of Chaos by Megan Aldridge. Few survive the palace of venom and thorns. Sam and Annabelle, an interracial couple navigating life in the deep south of 1905, plan to escape for the chance of a peaceful life together. On the eve of their departure, Sam vanishes in a flash of magical light. He reappears under a fog of amnesia, haunted by the Dark Queen. Embarking on a journey for survival, lines between realms blur, and Sam uncovers the Dark Queen's sinister plans. Pulled away from the reality of time, he fights to save himself, his love, and the people of the Dark Queen's empire. But when his memories return, will they be a blessing or a curse? So that was the description on Goodreads, but right now, since it is not released yet, you can only find the information for it on Goodreads or through Megan Aldridge and her website herself. So definitely check those out. I'll link to her YouTube and the Goodreads page in the description below. But we gotta talk. First of all, this cover is so pretty. So we have a lot of little details in it. It's a very layered visual image. It's got illustrative elements without being an illustrated cover, which if you watch my other videos, you know I'm kind of a sucker for those. We have a color palette here with the grays and the blues, really like a sapphire blue. Other elements that are definitely relevant to this book. We have the snake winding up in it. There is a snake. I'm not telling you who the snake or what the snake is, semi-spoiler, but we do have the snake in the story as well. And even from the description, you know there's gonna be like this whole thorns and roses kind of motif. So we have that on the cover as well. And I'm a sucker for blue. It catches my eye right away with most things. So that little accent of color when it's really mostly a grayscale cover is actually really, really nice. I do enjoy this cover. And there's even the little detail way in the background of the castle, which we can assume is the Dark Queen's castle. But obviously, once you read more, these things kind of make more sense to you. And on this cover, we can see that this is book 1 of the Chaos series. So I'm very curious about that for several reasons. But overall, cover, beautiful, professionally done. You could see this on a bookshelf or in a bookstore anywhere, and it's great. So on to the story itself, and I'm probably going to mix story, characters, world building a little bit together because I do want to do like an overall impression, and then if there's anything else in depth that might be a little spoilery without being like super spoilers, I'm gonna save that for the end of the video. As far as the story goes, we start out with Sam and Annabelle. They're an interracial couple from 1905, as the description says, which I don't recall that actual year being specified like in writing, like 1905, but there was references like Wizard of Oz, installments were coming out, Roosevelt was running for president, so there was context clues, and I might have just missed it, but I do remember wondering exactly what year it was because I was trying to like tell my husband what year it was, and I'm like, I don't know, Roosevelt. So not that it matters, but if it helps you with context, you have an actual date based from the description. Obviously in South Carolina, which is I believe where it's set, we're in deep South, very segregated. Sam, as a black man, being in love with Annabelle, who, you know, is just this white girl. Their relationship is more or less looked down upon by the local Southern community, so they've had to keep it secret, but they plan to run away, and actually they're heading west, which I was kind of wondering why they headed more west and less north. I guess I don't know enough about that time in history to be like, yeah, west is also where you can be whatever you want. So they plan to run away, and on the night before they intend to leave, that's when Sam disappears. There's a flash, he disappears, and then he reappears. And the story does a really great job of telling from both Annabelle and Sam's POVs. They felt really unique to each other. For a great portion of the first third of the book, we're in Annabelle's POV, sometimes alternating with Sam, but when he comes back, he has amnesia of what happened in the flashpoint. So not necessarily of his time before Annabelle, or before that with Annabelle, but for them it was just like seconds that he flashed and came back, but he came back with like bloody hands and whatnot, and he was like, I don't know. But he also is now like really, really sickly, but none of the doctors in town will help him because he's black, so they flee and head west. And at this point they do have some clues and some help from the other realm, which they still don't believe, but it's their only like go-to. The only thing, the hope that they have is to head out to Savannah to find an oracle, which has that connection to the other realm and should hopefully be able to give them answers and help Sam with his mystery illness here. On the way, they run into two fun characters who you can tell are a bit different because, well, mostly because they don't treat Sam and Annabelle like everybody else. And they're like, you know, like they don't care that they're together. They don't have the same prejudices. So you know they're a bit different. And then they're secretive about where they're really from. So you pick up on certain things to realize that they might not be from this realm. All of this really happens in the first third of the book, and like I said, you're mostly in Annabelle's point of view, and I actually think the first third was my favorite. Why? It felt very, very fleshed out, very engaging with seeing not only Sam's fight to protect Annabelle and figure out and like survive his curse, but Annabelle was such a driving character with her commitment to helping Sam despite all of the, like I said, the prejudices in the South and all of the terrible people they run into. So it was super engaging, and I don't read a lot of historical fiction, and I'm not a contemporary fiction person. Like things set in the world today, I'm like, I don't care that you have a Starbucks. Go to your fantasy realm. I was actually kind of surprised that I felt this way about the essentially non-fantasy section of the book, but it was so well written. The prose was great. I did catch a few word echoes where a very particular word is repeated in close proximity. This is not by any means like a big issue as far as like editing goes, because the editing was super clean, not a single typo that I could catch. But I'm also in editing mode for my own book, so I'm like, ooh, word echoes, we could change that. So I digress. That's not important to most of you, but editing mode. So yeah, I really, really enjoyed that first third of the book. And then essentially when they find the oracle, they learn that while Sam was flashed away, he was transported to this other realm for an unknown length of time, because time passes differently, and the oracle helps him regain those lost memories, and we get to spend the remainder of the book with Sam pretty much in that realm where he meets the Dark Queen, and she is very, very evil. Pretty much setting that up right from the beginning. Like, she is the worst thing in that entire world, and Sam is forced to live in her palace. That little part I might talk with in a few minutes here, because I do want to touch on a few details of it that may be spoilery, but if you don't want to be spoiled, just don't go that far. And he's over there and he starts meeting a whole bunch of different people who, despite, hating his entire situation, he kind of forms friendships, starts to care for them. So his goal is primarily to get back to Annabelle no matter what. But having made these friendships, now there's that little bit of him who's like, oh, if I leave, these people will be in danger and I want to help them, and this is all terrible, so I want to help. So he grows compassion for all these other characters that he meets outside of the Dark Queen, because she cannot be redeemed. We were limited in some things because he was isolated to the Dark Queen's palace, but we did have, touches of how the world was through certain characters. But overall, it's a pretty small world. At least it seems very small. The prologue at the beginning of the book kind of introduces how this world was created, where 3 goddesses of Greek origin. Based on the prologue, it sounds like these goddesses just yoinked up a chunk of earth and put it in their own controlled universe so that everybody there would only worship them instead of the whole pantheon of gods. It was an interesting idea, but there were certain things that I definitely had questions about. Some things definitely could miss me. I am not necessarily the most prolific of readers. There were just these certain things that, because of the repetition and the prominence, just kind of stuck out to me like, oh, why is that way? Again, editing mode here, so I'm like, I must question everything. And kind of piggybacking on that, there are a couple, they're not quite intimate scenes, but they're like Sam glimpsing the start of them or like walking in on one, so it's nothing like overwhelming if you're a reader who is uncomfortable by those. There was a scene with 2 women. I wondered why Sam didn't react or question that, because I can understand that he's faced his own prejudices and he's obviously in a relationship that's not accepted widely at the time that he's living in 1905. But also knowing that like he's got a very strong Christian base. This is 1905 in the South. I'm very surprised that he didn't at least put a second thought in the fact that he walked in on 2 women. It was just kind of like, oh, I'm sorry. And then he was just like normally embarrassed that he walked in on people. Yet he questions other things and is like constantly just angry at the Dark Queen. Understandably so, because like I said, she's a terrible person. In this world where everything is so different, in a lot of the instances, Sam felt like he didn't notice the differences at all. And I feel like even if you're someone who is outcasted by a group of people, you're still going to have a mental presence to notice differences, whether or not you care that people are different or, situations are different. The way that you're brought up, you're still going to recognize them at least. Did it affect the story? No. But I just think because we were in Sam's head so much, it was something that I expected he should or could comment on, and I didn't get that. Whereas we got, like I said, an abundance of his despise for the Queen. So anywho, I think I kind of went on a little tangent there, but back to the story itself again without trying to do any spoilers. So from this point on, there's going to be a little bit of spoilers, just so I can really discuss why I chose to rate this book the way that I did. More constructive criticism. So if you don't want spoilers and you have not read this book yet, stop. I will forgive you for whatever YouTube minute thingy there is. Like, don't worry about it. Bye-bye. I'll see you in the next video. However, if you do want just a little bit more of thoughts behind this review, this is spoiler-y time, just a little bit. So in Sam's quest to find a way back to Annabelle, he does make friendships and builds relationships with all these different kinds of people. I don't think it's any surprise that he does eventually get back home, but it happened way later than I expected. Sam does have a revelation of how he can get home. And I'm like, sweet, we're on the go home track. We're gonna get there. But because he has made these friendships, or, because we know something else is going on, he'll either have to come back or the Dark Queen's gonna follow him. That's where I really thought the story was going. And then it took a lot longer. So he found out the major thing he had to do, and then it was like side quest, friendship talk, filler episode. Meanwhile, he's kind of still trying to get another piece of what he thinks will help him get home. It felt like a couple extra steps. At that part of the book, I was ready to leave. I think it's called Tegea. I don't know how it's pronounced. it's this word. It's this is the other realm's name. But I was ready for him to leave because, again, he's isolated in the Dark Queen's palace, but it wasn't like going to Oz and seeing all these different things. And I specifically say Oz because both Sam and Annabelle were like reading stuff about Oz, but they were like, when it was Annabelle's POV in the beginning, they would be like, oh, like this is my yellow brick road, kind of, not that exact wording, but there were enough references to Oz that I just started picturing Oz as but yeah, because I had expected the plot to go in a different direction. I think the last third of the book really dragged for me, even though like things were building up at the end, and like the last couple chapters, there's a small twist at the end that I thought was so clever, and I really appreciate it. So he gets back to Annabelle and goes back to that moment in time where the Oracle had, you know, put him in his memories. As a book ending, yes, deciding to go back into the fray, definitely a good ending. And this is really, I think, again, editing mode commentary here. I wasn't as satisfied with that choice of pace because after we got the magic and we figured out the way to get home, it felt like it took forever. And so by the time that they got back, I was like, well, yeah, he's gonna go back. If he didn't go back and he sent the Fantastical Brothers back instead, and then the next book followed like somebody else's POV, that could be interesting, because spending so much time in Sam's head drained me. And I really enjoyed Annabelle's POV, even while we spent a lot of time with her at the beginning, but Sam's became very repetitive. So I'm not excited to get back in his head. I'm gonna be honest. We'll see if any of the POVs change in the following books, but at this moment, I need a break from Sam. With all that being said, I definitely think Megan's strongest point is her writing is very beautiful. It's not too purple prosy where I'm like, yes, the clouds are purple like lilacs and blah, blah, blah. So it's still very crisp. I definitely would like to see more POVs, and I really, 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 in the future books, I need to see more about this world, because definitely something has happened, and I'm very confident that Megan intends to reveal more about this world in the upcoming books, because there's clearly a passive time from when the world was created and now when the Dark Queen is in control. So there's a lot of stuff that's happened there. She definitely alluded to some of it, but we just need a little bit more of like what actually happened. I just need more world building. So I'm very curious about it. I'm definitely looking forward to the second one because my fantasy brothers are going back home. Looking forward to more fantasy stuff. I think I'm thinking way too much into this and I should probably stop talking. So if you guys have any other questions, I can try to answer them in the comments below. Definitely check out Megan's channel. Check out the book when it comes out. June 14th, I believe, is the release date. And as usual, if there's an indie book or self-published book that you have written or somebody you know and you would like me to read and review it, leave that in the comments below. Reach out to me on Instagram, and I will see you guys in the next one. Thanks for watching.